Well, hello, everybody. Today is Wednesday, February 13th, 2019, and this is our Obstacles webinar. So I decided to start with this collage with one of my favorite quotes by Henry Ford. Obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off the goal. And I remember having a poster when I was very young that said, obstacles are what you see when you take your eyes off the goal. And it was a picture of a bunch of boulders. I have to say this idea of clearing obstacles is very personal to me. In fact, I created the whole concept behind the Aspyrre name and the Aspyrre logo around this idea of clearing obstacles. So, you know, in the Aspyrre logo, we have this picture of a mountain and this arrow up to the top of the mountain. And, you know, we sort of start at the bottom and we see this path, and the top of the mountain represents success, or where I want to be. And everything that I feel that I do for you in my programs, personally, one-on-one coaching, in our group programs and classes, is to help what I call clear this path so it's easier for you to get from point A to point B. So, you know, what does that mean? Well, what that means is it's really helpful to have a model that tells you what are the kinds of things that get in the way of success. And I started my business about 20 years ago, and about then is when I started becoming obsessed with what gets in people's way and, you know, measuring it and watching it. And I created this model, and from my experiences with my clients, and as I continued to work with my clients, I kept seeing more and more and more of this and how it all worked together. So I call this the obstacles pyramid, and there's a little boat with water, because for a while I was calling it an iceberg. But the general idea is, with the level of the water here, is that typically if we know where we want to go, because the first obstacle, clarity, part of clarity is even knowing where it is you want to go. So I have a lot of people whose main obstacle is they have no idea what the next step is or where they want to go. And confusion is showing up, and it keeps coming back. So they'll get clear for maybe 24 hours and then they'll get confused again. And there's reasons for that, which we'll go over in the webinar. But let's say that you know where you want to go. And we'll just call this pyramid the thing that's standing in your way. But typically what people see is just the tip of the iceberg. That's where the iceberg idea came from, just the tip of the pyramid. But let's just pretend that this thing keeps growing. So if you only hack it off at the top, it's still going to keep rising up and getting in your way. It's not going to go away forever because you've got roots down here. You know, you got more and more stuff down here. And so there are 5 categories of obstacles. And the first category I'm going to call clarity versus confusion. What I mean by that is the obstacle is you don't know. You don't know what steps to take. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know maybe what direction you want to go. And for the higher levels, it's easier to see. I mean, if I'm confused, I know I'm confused. If I'm clear, I know I'm clear. That's pretty obvious. And it actually doesn't take as much time to get rid of that obstacle. And so this is where we have problems, probably with lots of people thinking that they're being helpful, because you could have a 2-hour conversation with someone who's confused, and in that conversation they can get a few insights and feel like all of a sudden they're very clear. But typically what happens at the clarity versus confusion level is that it doesn't last very long. So people feel clear, but then the confusion keeps coming back, or the self-doubt keeps coming back. And it doesn't always keep coming back, so sometimes all you need is a little bit of clarity, right? If you don't have any baggage related to something that you're trying to achieve, then all you have to do is learn how to achieve it. Learn what it is that you need, get a little bit of clarity, and all that might take is an hour or 2 of information gathering, and then you're free, and you're just moving on down. But the problem occurs when people keep getting confused. So they start out clear, but then they get confused again, or they start having self-doubt, or they're not really sure of the decisions they're making. They get wishy-washy about those kinds of things. So sometimes the reason that we're not clear is because we have a belief system, or we have unmet needs, or we have issues in our relationships that are actually causing us to be confused. And so that's where stuff on the underneath side of the pyramid, the deeper side of the pyramid, can affect the top level. Now let's go down a level to just under the surface, to the habits, all right? So let's pretend that you know what you want to do, which is to keep your desk organized in your office. And you're very clear that that's what you want to do. And so you go in on a Saturday and you spend your whole day organizing your desk, but then the desk doesn't stay organized. And let's say you don't have any issues with clarity because you know you want your desk organized, and it's just frustrating because it keeps getting cluttered. So it keeps getting cluttered on you. So then what do you do about it? Well, what you might notice is that you have a habit of working right up to the moment that you have to run out the door. So let's say you have to pick up your kids from daycare at 6, and at 5 o'clock you're still trying to finish those last emails, those last projects. You may have papers spread all over your desk that you're trying to get through, and you just want to finish this one more thing, and you're looking at the clock, and it's 5:45, and you finally got to get out of there so you're not late to pick up your kids. You don't have any time to organize anything. And you decide that what you're going to do is you're going to develop this habit of stopping everything at 5:30 and getting your desk organized and starting to do a to-do list for the next day and getting everything all organized. If you develop that habit, that will help you stay organized. And developing that habit takes how long? You know, people have all sorts of data related to habit development. Some people say 21 days, some people say 30 days, some people say 3 months. It just depends, and it's all about reprogramming your brain. But if you have the discipline to develop the habit will help you continue on with your goal. And we can look at this obstacles pyramid at a individual level, you know, me staying organized, but we can also apply this to an organization. And the habits can be the systems and processes in your organization. So if you have really good systems and processes in the organization, it makes it easy for people to stay on task. And clarity in an organization is about people knowing the vision and the mission and the strategy and being very clear on what their goals are. And then if they're clear on their goals, but they don't have systems and processes in place to support their goals, then it makes it harder to move quickly and effectively towards your goals. But if the organization is set up with systems and processes that help people hold each other accountable and help people track how they're doing on their progress, then those systems and processes will help with the clarity and help people stick with their goals. So habits, you know, you could change a habit, create a habit in, 21 days to, let's say, 3 to 6 months. Let's talk about relationships. Now, relationships is even deeper. And we talked about this a lot this morning because relationships can get in the way in ways that are not so visible, not so obvious. And there are a lot of different ways that relationships can either help you or hurt you when it comes to achieving your goals. So one thing that's very surface level is your network, your quantity of people you know and the quality of people you know. So if you have a really robust network and you want to change jobs, typically you can just make a few phone calls and those will lead directly to interviews, and you can have a job change within a week. I mean, that's at the top level. But people who decide they want to change a job and have been neglecting their network usually have, several painful months to build their network back up. But relationships don't only have to do with the quality and the quantity of your network, of the people in your network. It also has to do with the roles that you play in your relationships. And we spent a lot of time talking about this in our in-person session, about how you can have an identity in a certain group of people, and that identity makes it very difficult for you to become someone different. I'll give you an example from my life. I was really shy when I was young, very awkward, not great with social interactions when I was in high school, and I really wanted to become popular and extroverted and have a lot of friends, and I desperately wanted this. So I studied people, and I learned everything I could learn about them. And in some of my other groups, so I had a church group also at the time that I was part of, I was able to make more friends. But in my high school, I was so used to being the one that was quiet and on the outskirts that I could not break out of that mode. It felt too uncomfortable for me to try to suddenly be extroverted one day when I had been introverted the prior day, and I could not make that change. So what I ended up doing is waiting until I moved from high school to college, and then that's when I completely recreated myself and I made my big change. So who you are in a group can make a huge difference in terms of supporting you, especially when you're trying to make a change in your life. So another example that I'll have from my own life that I can share with you is when I made my career transition to being a coach. Before that, I'd worked at a high-tech company, and I was a product manager, and I was very well networked within my company, and so I just assumed that when I started my new job, I'd be able to depend on all these people to support me. But what happened was they thought of me as a product manager. So when I said, hey, I'm a coach now, they said, oh, that's great. And that was all. And they didn't refer me to people because they didn't believe that all of a sudden I could become a coach after I'd just been a product manager yesterday. And when I said things like, hey, refer me to clients, or would you like to be my client? They would say, well, why would I have to pay you to talk to you? You're my friend. I talk to you all the time. I don't get it. And they were just completely perplexed. There wasn't anything about me that they didn't like. They just were so used to seeing me as a product manager that it made no sense to them to see me as a coach. So I had to find a completely new network, a completely new group of people to become my new self with. And it took about 2 to 3 years. And once I had been in that new network doing coaching for 2 to 3 years, and then reconnecting with my people back at my high-tech company, then they started hiring me, because by then enough time had gone by for my identity to change in their eyes too. But that's why always when people are in job transition, I, kind of stop and help them think about what the roles are that they have that might be holding them back from becoming the new person they're trying to be, especially when people are trying to navigate a career change or job change or somehow become someone different. And this can happen in a lot of smaller relationships, like your family relationships as well. The role can hold you back. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to turn off the recording, and I'm going to unmute everybody, and we'll see what questions you have that I'll address before I go down to the next 2 levels of the pyramid. Okay, well, we're back. We had a few questions, and mainly to do with just people trying to make a job change and how weird it is, but how true it is that you have to kind of start with strangers when you're reforging your identity. I have one more story related to that, and this is not a career transition strategy, but it's someone who was married for, I think, 20 or 30 years, was recently going through a divorce. And one of the things that she did was take a sabbatical from work. She'd saved up a bunch of money, and she just left. She traveled. So she's been in South America, she's been in New Zealand, she's been in Spain, and I just she's in our group, and I had a coaching session with her. And one of the things that we realized was getting away from all of her friendships, all of her work ties, her home ties. It was painful for sure, but it helped her go through her grief. very much more quickly. Just being in a place where she was working with relative strangers. And one of the things that she told me is when she was at one of these places, it was like a workaway where you can travel to another country and you can get room and board while you're working part-time on someone's plantation or helping them with other things that they need help with. So you're kind of doing a little bit of work part-time every day to pay for your room and board. So it allows people to travel for long periods of time on low budgets. And one of the things that we discussed, which was really kind of interesting, is how when it's not just the relationships that you have with people kind of define who you are in many different ways that are incredibly invisible. And that's the thing that's the hard with this relationships level. So this person had an identity with the person that she'd been with all this time. And so to try to figure out who she was separate from that was part of her journey. But another part of her journey is somehow I built my life around this idea of success that had to do with success means a six-figure income. Success means a certain kind of relationship that I have to have. It means I have to have moved into a certain kind of house. And, you know, that's probably not what success ever meant to me, because I always wanted to make a difference in this world. But I called making a difference in this world success when I was little because I didn't know what else to call it. And then I was surrounded with adults who told me what success was. So I thought to have a fulfilling life, which in my definition is making a difference in this world, I thought in order to do that I needed to be a quote-unquote success. And then I heard other people tell me what a success was, so then I thought I had to do that and I had to do that. Now I'm an adult. Now I realize I don't have to be any of those things. And those things may not even be a definition of success, but is success really what I want? And so now she's kind of able to go down and kind of define her purpose without the baggage of all the people in her life that are telling her what it is. Now, it's not through any malintention of their own, and she's not breaking off these relationships. She had a friend come out and visit her for a while. There's lots of love still there, but being physically away from those people has really helped her make this change, traverse through a lot of the grief quicker than one might normally, and then really do some deep thinking to redefine who she is, who she wants to be in this world, what this next chapter is. So it's really interesting how getting away from the relationships that tend to define you can really make a difference in your ability to make a huge change, become someone different. All right, so now I want to go to the deeper level. So we talked about how habits might take, 21 days at the shortest, 3 to 6 months at the longest. When you think about forging new relationships, how long do you imagine that would take? And I know you guys are all on mute, so you can't really answer me. So I'll give the answer that they gave in the class this morning, which was, if you are putting tons of effort towards it, you could build a fairly decent network in about 4 months. But, 4 months to 2 years, to build new relationships that are starting to feel strong and new close relationships. So it's building strong relationships that support you as the new you. That can take some time. But it's not impossible. You can begin, something in as little as a few months. But let's go down to needs. So needs, the way that you want to think about needs is, I think I have another model here I want to show you. So this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which some of you have seen before because you've been in my group. Some of you have seen before because you've taken a psychology class. There are many models of needs out there. This is my favorite because it's very simple, very clear, and I don't think it matters if you use this model or someone else's model of human needs, because the premise that we're going to talk about today is the same, and that is when you have all of your needs met, you're in a different state of being than when you are when you have some unmet needs. And examples of unmet needs are at the bottom of this Maslow's hierarchy pyramid, physiological. I'm plagued by hunger, thirst, cold, heat. So if you're feeling any of these things, you're feeling miserable, and the only thing that you can think of is, I need to get this need met. So, for example, the best example under physiological is air. If you're having an asthma attack or someone's holding your head underwater, nothing in the world matters other than getting air, and you're feeling a sense of panic. It's a primitive emotional response when you have an unmet need. So we have needs here in several categories, and the idea is that the physiological ones are fundamentally more important or more urgent when they're missing than the ones up above. So your safety needs are more being afraid that something bad will happen that will threaten your life. Love and belonging, all human beings need to belong. We have a very strong drive to belong to community, to belong to a tribe. And the reason that we have that need is because humans cannot survive without belonging to a tribe. And then the self-esteem part of the equation is your status within the tribe. So I guess you could pause the video to read all these. I'm not going to read all these particular descriptions to you. And self-actualization is more of that creative energy that you have when you're completely engaged. So the way you might not feel self-actualized is if you're feeling a little bit bored. And self-actualization would make you feel more engaged. So the thing to keep in mind, though, is that there's a feeling associated with having all your needs met. And in the class this morning, I asked people to compare when they were at their best versus when they were at their worst. And the different things that people said to describe the moments that they remembered that when they were at their best were things like a sense of well-being, a sense of confidence, a sense of empowerment. They felt really good inside, a sense of inner peace. And what was even more prevalent is that there was an absence of a lot of negative emotion that drags you down. The signals that tell you that you have an unmet need are emotional reactions, surges of anger, frustration, the times when you act in ways that you later regret. If you may have heard in neuroscience the term amygdala hijacking. It's a phrase that people use now for when people get blinded by their anger and they say things that they regret later, right? Or they lash out, or they snap, or they let out their frustration. But the thing that I want you to pay attention to is it's the surge of unpleasant emotion itself that is your signal that there is a need that is unmet. And that can be anxiety, it can be fear, it can be anger, it can be exhaustion, it can be complete energy drain. So there are a lot of different examples of those kinds of emotions, but you'll know it because you don't like feeling it. It's something you really don't like feeling at all. You want to get back to that feeling of being peaceful and confident. So it becomes urgent to you to take care of whatever is causing the emotional pain. And the emotional pain is your signal that there's an unmet need. So in this model of needs, we have some needs that are temporarily unmet. So for example, if I'm thirsty and I drink water, I won't be thirsty anymore. If I'm feeling lonely and I reach out to a friend and I start feeling a strong connection to that friend, I start feeling better. If I'm feeling low self-esteem and then I have a couple of good accomplishments, I'm usually feeling better about myself. So most of these unmet needs, they're temporary. They cause little temporary emotional glitches in our lives. But they're only temporary if we have a sense of abundance about that particular need. So the emotional reaction that signals to us that a need is unmet, I call a trigger, and so many of you that have been with Aspyrre for a while may have been keeping a trigger log, and that is to help you become aware of what are the times when you have these little reactions that are signals to you that your needs are not being met, and what's the thinking that goes along behind with that, et cetera, et cetera. Well, why we do that is because, well, some of these unmet needs don't cause a lot of angst. Those are the ones that we feel that there's an abundance of. So if I start feeling thirsty, I'm only going to panic if I feel that water is scarce. If I feel that water is abundant, I am not going to panic. I'm not going to have as much or as strong of an emotional reaction. I'm just going to go get water. If I'm feeling, let's say, worthless, but I feel a sense of abundance about my ability to accomplish things, I'm not really going to have a strong emotional reaction. I'm going to just go start accomplishing things, and I know I'll feel better. But if I have a perpetual sense of nothing I do is ever good enough, I start spiraling down here. So why do I bring this whole new pyramid into the picture? Because to me, the whole goal of personal growth, coaching, and effectiveness is getting to a place where your needs are all met, because that's that calm, confident feeling that you have inside. And when you have that feeling inside, everything else you do becomes more effective. The relationships you have don't define you as much. It's easier to make new relationships. It's easier to walk away from relationships that are difficult for you. It's easier to not fall into roles in order to be liked by other people. It's easier to stick to habits when you have your needs met. So, for example, if you're an emotional eater like I am, and I try to create some health habits around my eating, if I have an unmet need and I have kind of a surge of anxiety and my thought is I need chocolate, then no matter how well I try to stick to these habits, anytime that unmet need hits, I'm going to be overcome by the emotion and I'm going to want to grab food. So unmet needs are much deeper, and most people are not aware of them. They only know that they're reacting and they're trying to control the reaction. So that's why I want to spend a little bit more time with needs. But before I do that, I want to tell you the rest of the pyramid here to make sure that we get that done before we wrap up today. And that is, underneath needs are what we call beliefs. The beliefs are all the reasons in the world that all of our interpretations of everything in the world, all of our explanations about why things happen, why something's happened, what something means. And we can have beliefs that say we can't get certain needs met. We can have beliefs that certain things are scarce. So for me, I could have a belief that water's scarce in the world. And if I have that belief, then even if there's water sitting right in front of my face, I won't believe that that water's clean, or I'll believe that there's something wrong with it. Maybe it's alcohol instead of water, but I won't believe that it's there. So even if something's sitting right in front of our face, we will not trust it. If we believe that money is scarce and someone offers us $1 million, we'll go, what's the catch? If we believe that money is abundant and someone offers us $1 million, we accept it. We tend to trust and receive the things that we need when we have beliefs that support that everything we need is abundant in the world. So I have a couple other models to explain this to you, because this is the work that is a little bit deeper, that creates obstacles for us that we're not even aware of. So we may spend a lifetime trying to hack away at obstacles up here, and problems keep coming back and keep coming back and keep coming back. And we're like, why does that happen? Well, where your work is going to be the most valuable is down here. Now, that doesn't mean don't do work up here. You have to do work in the short term that's going to be more effective today, no matter where you are in your growth. So what we do here at Aspyrre is we take a two-pronged approach. One is, what's a tool I can give you that will help you be more effective today at what you're trying to complete? But what's also an insight I can give you that can help you with some long-term growth, because every few percentage points of long-term growth you have, that makes everything on up the pyramid easier. I think I'm going to stop one more time for questions before I finish up, just to make sure I get everybody's questions covered. All right, I'm back. We had a couple of more comments. One was, just acknowledgement that, for needs and beliefs, as you go down this pyramid, it takes longer. It's harder to find your obstacle. And then once you've found your obstacle, it takes more effort to resolve it. But what I've seen with my clients is usually between 4 and 6 months of focused effort can help you get a need that's not been met ever more met, and it can help you change a limiting belief or eliminate a negative belief. However, what I've noticed that most people do is they will focus on it for a little while, but they still have life they have to live. So what we favor here is a two-pronged approach, and that two-pronged approach is periodically doing an intensive related to needs and beliefs, so you're very focused on it, but then also using tools that can help you be effective on the day-to-day basis. So kind of cycling back and forth and going hand in hand. And just keep in mind that the idea isn't to completely strip yourself of all negative beliefs and all unmet needs before you can do anything productive in the world. What I've noticed is that as people change some of their beliefs and get some of their needs met, they become more confident. And the way I measure it personally is, I would say 20 years ago, I would get up in the morning and I would have butterflies in my stomach. I would feel sick to my stomach with anxiety, and I wouldn't even know what I was anxious about. I would just feel anxious. And I would feel anxious about 90% of every day. And I would just be dying for a weekend or a day I didn't have any pressure, so that I could maybe not feel anxious for part of that day. And then as time went on, I started working on getting my unmet needs met and really doing some of this work that you do when you're a coach. I really started changing, and it moved, in the first few years, it moved to the point where my anxiety was only coming up maybe 20% of the day. And the rest of the day, I was actually feeling pretty good. And I would say now, 20 years later, I probably am anxious a little bit once a month or so, and it's usually triggered by something like a big new training I'm doing at a client, and I just want to do a good job, so I feel a little bit nervous before I go to it, or a big speaking engagement, or maybe it's something that happens in my family that makes me feel concerned for them. So I might have those little surges, but most of them are temporary. They don't last long, and they can be resolved pretty quickly. So I measure it by my anxiety, how much of it I experience every day, and there was some other way that I measure it too. But it does make it so you don't have to be complete. Like, I'm not complete. I don't have every single need met and every single limiting belief eliminated, but I have made tons of progress, and the way I measure that is by my way of being every day. All right, so I'm going to see, we have about 10 more minutes, so I'm just going to maybe spend 5 more minutes going over some of the other concepts that help. So this is our little needs pyramid, and I talked a little bit about how your beliefs can get in the way of getting your needs met. And so I want to talk a little bit about what beliefs are. You want to think about beliefs as things that you've learned that you no longer question. So what ends up happening is, just think about beliefs as learning, because that makes it a lot less mysterious when you think about, well, how do I change a belief, or how do I undo a belief? Just think of yourself as someone with a curious mind who's learning, and sometimes you have to re-examine things that you learned when you were younger because they've changed, or maybe you learned them wrong. So sometimes you have to unlearn things. Beliefs are usually about me, who I am. They're about the world, who other people are, or other people. So how does this world that I live in work? What do I need to do in this world to get what I need? That type of thing. So you have a lot of beliefs about what you have to do to get your needs met. Now keep in mind that your needs are about survival. So that's why you have such strong emotional reactions when you don't have an unmet need. So when you have an unmet need. So, you need air. Here we have the needs pyramid. You need air, water, food, warmth, health, energy, rest in order to survive. You need to not be killed by someone with a gun in order to survive, right? And you need to be part of a tribe if you're a human being. You need to be part of a community. Human beings cannot live in isolation. So that's why we have such strong emotional reactions when we feel that the people in our community don't like us or are going to reject us. We really hate being rejected because we want to be a part of our tribe. And then our esteem is, you know, how do I get more of what I need within the tribe? You know, how do I get more established within the tribe? Well, my status in the tribe is going to make a big difference. All right. So these are the things that we need to survive in the world. And our beliefs are, our survival beliefs are, what is it that I need to do in order to get these needs met? And so of all the beliefs that you have in the world, the ones that affect your growth the most are the ones that are related to what you've decided it's going to take to get your needs met or not get them met. And so, is there enough of something in the world for you is a key belief. I call it a scarcity versus an abundance belief. If I believe that there's plenty of water in the world, then every time I'm thirsty, I'm going to drink water. If I don't believe that there's plenty of water in the world, then every time I'm thirsty, I'm going to panic a little bit. I'm going to take a few little sips of water and I'm going to hoard it. Very different behavior patterns based only on what I believe about the abundance or the scarcity of water. And it happens with love, it happens with accomplishments, just as much as it happens with water or food or air or energy. Okay? If there isn't enough, my survival beliefs, so I have scarcity beliefs, which is what's scarce and what's abundant, and then I have survival beliefs, which are, is there enough? If there isn't enough, or if I don't have it, what do I have to do? Do I have to fight for it? Do I have to hoard it? Do I have to manipulate others into giving it to me? So what is it that I have to do in order to get my needs met? Those are my survival beliefs. These are the things that we don't question anymore. We just think they're the truth. Okay, so I gave you the $1 million example. This is my scarcity versus abundance model. And then we have another model here at Aspyrre that's a little bit deeper that we did not go over in the class. But basically, your core beliefs are, how do I get my needs met in the world? My scarcity belief is, what's missing? What are the beliefs that are scarce? And this is the thing that gets in the way. This is like the biggest obstacle of anything, is whatever you believe. It's your belief that says that something you need in the world is scarce. Usually it's some form of love and esteem from others. It could be freedom, but you know, it's the thing that you revolve your life around getting because you believe that it's scarce. So if you're in a society where food is scarce, your whole life will be built around food. If you're in a society where shelter is scarce, your whole life will be built around having shelter. So your life tends to be built around doing whatever you can to get the things that you believe are scarce. Okay, so you develop survival beliefs, which is what I believe I need to do to get the things that are scarce. On top of that, you develop survival strategies, which are simply your behaviors, right? So if something has to happen in order for me to get what I desperately need, then what must I do at all costs? And a great example of this is someone who's a high achiever that has to achieve at all costs. They've usually developed a belief that in order for them to get love and esteem and be a part of a tribe, they have to achieve. They have to have accomplishments. And if they're not worthwhile, they don't deserve to be in the tribe, and they're going to get booted out of the tribe. But our survival strategies tend to have collateral damage. So if we're an overachiever, we might not get sleep, we might be stressed all the time, we might be doing things that we don't really want to do, we might never enjoy our lives, we might never have life balance, we might never enjoy our families, etc. Okay, so back to our obstacles pyramid. Now this is from an older presentation I have, which kind of goes through teaching other coaches through the obstacle pyramids, what are some things that happen with clients. And I'm not going to go into that now because we're getting to the top of the hour, but it pretty much tells you kind of at every level, excuse me, how things will show up for people. And so, yep, this is sort of the last thing that I have, and again, this is me from a presentation that I use to train other coaches, but I say give them tools. So I have level 1 tools that you can use for decision making, time management, communication, that really help you with the stuff at the top. It's short term. You can get a hit, an effectiveness hit, productivity, those kinds of things. So they're short term. They help you be more effective, and I think they're really important, and you can learn and grow through those. Level 2 tools, I say, are needs and boundaries. They're basically your relationship tools. They help you with self-discovery, and they kind of help you at the relationships level. And then your level 3 tools, the deep ones, these are the transformational tools that help you with your needs and your beliefs. So that is it. I'm going to turn off the recording. So for those of you on the recording, I hope you enjoyed it. And for those of you that are off the recording, right now we're going to go and we're going to do Final Gems.